So Jesus' leadership in this story was not driven by fear, was not driven by anxiety, but he was leading from a deep sense of trust, which is what he called his disciples to do. Jesus was like, hey, I trust that we're going to go to where we said we were going to go. You guys aren't trusting. Do you trust me? I trust you. Like Jesus was entrusting this journey into the hands of the disciples, and they didn't realize that Jesus trusted them. And that just got me thinking, like, what's really the most important thing when it comes to leading through difficult seasons and challenging seasons and change? And really, I think it's leading from a place of rest. And this is what Jesus did so well. And as I was preparing for this thought, I was just reminded once again how strong Jesus was as on his boundaries as a leader. Like I was just really struck once again. And in fact, Rachel brought this to mind as well as I was looking through this. And so like my verse I wanted to bring was from Mark chapter 4, verse 35 to 40. And that's the story of Jesus in the boat going across Lake Galilee. And there's a storm that begins to whip up in the lake. And so it says the same day after it grew dark. So this is at night. So they're crossing the lake at night. In itself would have been a little bit scary, maybe. Or these guys were seasoned fishermen, so maybe it wasn't that bad for them. But Mark makes the point of telling us that it was at night. So that same day, after it grew dark, Jesus said to his disciples, let's cross over to the other side of the lake. Leaving the crowd behind, the disciples got into the boat in which Jesus was already sitting, and they took him with them, and other boats sailed with them. And so suddenly, it says, they were crossing the lake, and a ferocious storm arose with violent winds and waves that were crashing into the boat until it nearly swamped them. But Jesus was calmly sleeping in the stern, resting on a cushion. So somehow Jesus either was very tired and was unable to be woken because of how much, energy he'd exerted, or there was something else going on in his spirit that meant this storm wasn't going to shake him. And so the storm didn't shake him, but it goes on to say the disciples did. It says, so they shook him awake. And they said, teacher, don't you even care that we're all about to die? So fully awake, it goes on to say, he rebuked the storm, shouted to the sea, hush and be still. And all at once the wind stopped and the water became perfectly calm. Then he turned to his disciples and he said to them, why are you so afraid? Haven't you learnt to trust yet? And that's the key, trust. But they were overwhelmed with fear and awe, and they said to one another, who is this man who has such authority that even the wind and the waves obey him? Now, the thing I wanted us to take away from that verse today, in this particular part of these beyond church leadership culture kind of takeaways, this is that beyond church leadership culture is one that's rested leadership, is that this story highlights the importance of leading from a place of rest and even emotional health. I know Jesus was exhausted. I know Jesus was tired. I know Jesus had been exerting himself and been, bringing heaven to earth and, miracle after miracle. But I also believe that Jesus was emotionally healthy. And so the rest, the sleep that he was taking wasn't something that he was taking because he, was completely wasted. It was something that he was taking because he knew it was a wise thing to do. So Jesus, despite the chaos in this situation and even the danger, he was able to find calm and peace, and even demanded it from nature. His disciples, on the other hand, were the opposite. They were the complete contrast. There's a perfect contrasted story here where Jesus was how things should be, and the disciples is how things shouldn't be in crisis, chaos. Jesus was the one who was able to be flexible, was going with the flow, and the disciples were the ones that were shaking Jesus awake and saying, we can't handle it. This is a mess. Can you please help? So Jesus' leadership in this story was not driven by fear, was not driven by anxiety, but he was leading from a deep sense of trust, which is what he called his disciples to do. Jesus was like, hey, I trust that we're going to go to where we said we were going to go. You guys aren't trusting. Do you trust me? I trust you. Like Jesus was entrusting this journey into the hands of the disciples, and they didn't realize that Jesus trusted them. And so Jesus trusted God's sovereignty. And even Jesus was just so sure of the purpose for which he was placed in the world at this time, that he knew where he was going, he knew what was coming, he knew the outcome was going to be perfect. And, the thing that I was just saying earlier about Rachel reminding me of this concept as well was the story of Jesus healing Jairus' daughter. And if you remember, Jairus came to Jesus and said, my daughter is sick, can you heal her? And Jesus said, yes, I'll go and heal her. And so on the way to healing her, he gets interrupted by a woman with an issue of blood, and she wants a healing from Jesus. She reaches out and touches his garment. And so Jesus, he stops and he takes the time to consider this woman and bring a teaching around, faith and healing. And then the crowd comes back to Jesus and say, Jairus' daughter has died. And so, I just think, well, Jesus is just so sure of his purpose and has just so much, so clear about his boundaries that nothing like that phases him. He's never rushed. He's never in a hurry. He's never panicked. And like everything is a measured response with Jesus. And I think that there's so much that we can learn from that. I kind of call this leading from your pillow. Leading from your pillow, leading from a place of complete rest. Never rushed. So that's the challenge. Like, when was the last time you were in a hurry? And I reckon there was a time very recently that you were in a hurry. I also am like that. I'm in a hurry sometimes. I just think that's a great litmus test for, wow, things have gone sideways. Because if Jesus can get it done, without being in a hurry, and he calls us to follow in his footsteps, then I think we can get it done without being rushed in a hurry. So let me give you, this is machine gun bullet points. You ready for these? 10 practical ways to cultivate rested leadership.
Oh, 10.
You ready? Number 1, prioritize personal rest and reflection and recharge. So if things are going to be difficult, if storms are going to whip up, then we have to be the people that are bringing rest to the situation, as Jesus did. Jesus was rested. Number 2, find moments of solitude to seek God's presence to gain clarity. Seek solitude. Do whatever you can to squirrel away time where you can be on your own, as Jesus did. Number 3, set boundaries, keep them. Protect your time and energy. So set the boundaries, set them ahead of time. That's why calendars and scheduling is about personal leadership. It's not about getting things done. Set boundaries and keep them. Number 4, practice self-care. And we talk about this a lot, basic things like, moving, like exercising. It's not, haven't got to be a CrossFit athlete. Just move around, burn some calories, keep healthy, go for a walk, eat healthy food. You don't need to be, a dietitian, but just, junk food's going to slow you down. It's going to make you feel horrible. And just getting good sleep. Again, whatever you need to do to get the sleep you need. So these are all simple things, right? But they make a huge difference to leading from a place of rest instead of leading rushed and leading in a hurry and leading from weakness. So that's number 4. Number 5, engage in activities that rejuvenate your mind and stimulate your mind and your spirit. So whatever the kinds of things you need to do to stimulate you, to energize you, rejuvenate you, whether it's reading a good book, watching a documentary that challenges your thinking, or meeting with a great friend that stirs your spirit, whatever it is, that activity that engages you and rejuvenates you, you've got to do those. Number 6, we talk about this a lot, your mentors, your coaches, the people in your life that speak into you, that challenge you, you have to prioritize those. Number 7, delegation. Delegate tasks and empower other people to share the workload. Denise did this. She's, as pastoral care, it's a responsibility for her to kind of make sure people are connected and they're cared for, but she can't do it all. So being able to delegate that to someone else and asking someone else to, follow up with someone is great, because then she's got more room, not rushed, not in a hurry, because she's asked someone else to help. So delegation is important for leading from the pillow. Number 8, this is what Jesus did: trusted God's guidance and surrendered control of the outcomes over to God. It's not up to us to control the outcomes. And when we have to, and as Richard shared before about flexibility, we do what we can. If things go sideways and things are messy and we have to adjust, we really aren't in control of the outcome, but we can we can trust God and we can surrender control over to him. Number 9, and this is an interesting one, but I think it's really important. We have to be willing to be humble. And in humility, what I'm saying there is we need to embrace our limitations. We can't do everything. We can't be the best at everything. So instead of getting discouraged and disappointed about what's missing, if we can embrace our limitations, we can walk with a sense of confidence and at a pace that isn't rushed and isn't hurried and isn't trying to overreach beyond what we're capable of. It's so important, embracing our limitations, being humble in who we are and what we've got to bring. And finally, focusing on stewardship. Again, this is somewhat like not focusing on the outcomes, being faithful with what we've got and trusting focusing on faithful stewardship rather than taking sole responsibility for success or failure. Focus on faithful stewardship rather than taking sole responsibility for success or failure.